to our adventures through Star Wars Aftermath by Chuck Wendig. If you're catching this video and you don't know what the series is, please click on the thing here and it'll take you back to the beginning. Basically, we're doing a week-by-week, little bit more than chapter-by-chapter breakdown, but we're taking tiny chunks out of this book, kind of breaking them down, talking about what they mean for new Star Wars canon, what they mean towards the book as a whole, and kind of going through this adventure together, and I'd love it if you could join us. But getting to what we're talking about this week, we are talking about chapters 13 and 14. So 13 is a little baby chapter, and 14 is a big, jolly green giant chapter. So let's just kind of get to 13. 13 is basically a giant action scene. So Nora and Timon are trying to get away from thugs, and they end up on a rooftop chase, and it's kind of interesting because it's this big action scene, but it's really Nora kind of going through in her mind what it means to be a parent, right? She's thinking to herself about how you spend your child's whole life raising him or her up and like trying to teach them how to live and survive and all of this stuff, and now here she is on a roof and she thinks her son's about to kill her because he doesn't know what on earth he's doing. Lo and behold, Timon, who basically lives on these streets, has all of these hijinks and traps and whatchamacallits that he can rig, and he can get around on the rooftops and avoid streets, which was really cool. It was a really cool action scene, but it was really cool to like live this action scene out through also this kind of like introspective parenthood thing. Getting to this point in the book and thinking about what I was going to discuss for like this chapter, this set of chapters and so forth, I'm realizing I really like this book. I love this book. I really like the next two. The books get progressively better. Aftermath is good. Life Debt, the second one, is really good. And Empire's End, the third one, is phenomenal. And so a lot of my issues with Aftermath kind of start to go away in the following books. But one of them is Wendig really wants to make sure you get the point. And he's going to explain the point to you many times. This is good because you get the point. Unfortunately, I feel like it makes a lot of what I want to talk about repetitive, because this is another chapter in which Nora is questioning motherhood. That's a big thing to talk about, and like normal people would need more than like 2 days in a book to come to terms with things, and I get that. But there's just a point where it's like it's spelled out bluntly and obviously many times. This is just like another chapter where it's like, I like what you're doing, and I like the juxtaposition going on right now, but like literally we had this talk like 3 pages ago. So we're starting to get a little bit repetitive, especially because of what's going to happen in the next chapter. It just kind of makes me realize, at the end of chapter 14, the start of chapter 15 in the paperback edition that I have is 172. So like it takes 172 pages to kind of get where the story's going. Partly because there's a lot of setup which is necessary, and it's kind of the nature of the beast with this first book, especially because this first book came out before The Force Awakens, and the next 2 books came out after. And so they were able to tell a lot more of what was going on in the universe. However, then we get to chapter 14, and chapter 14 is where we finally get it going, and I'm really excited. Now, chapter 14 is a very hefty chapter. Hefty. And it's the chapter where all the threads kind of come together. So this is the chapter where Nora and Timon meet Singer and Jazz, and Singer and Jazz have just found each other in the last chapter, and we kind of starting to get the semblance of this crew coming together. So at this point, Timon has been captured by the gangster fellow, the Celestian gangster. He is being held in the same place where Jazz and Singer are currently starting to escape. So Singer, in the previous chapter, chapter 12, has made a plea to Jazz to like let him come along, let him be useful. That's that whole thing. And in this chapter 14, he gets a little bit miffed because Jazz sees the kid Timon and wants to help him immediately, and he's like, "Hold on, I had to give you my spiel. What's going on here?" And this shows a couple different things. One, I think it shows Jazz. I mean, Jazz is a bounty hunter, but she does have a heart. She's going to see a kid in trouble and care a little bit more than, like, average adult alley scum. I think part of it is she now has kind of this natural distaste for Singer. Singer is somebody that's reminding her about her past, which is something she doesn't necessarily want. Singer is someone, for a brief period of time, she thinks he wanted to buy her, right? So when Singer sees that Jazz has been captured by the gangster. He pretends to be an Imperial who's coming for an auction to purchase her. So she's already kind of distrustful. Obviously, Sinjir was doing this, as a guise, but she doesn't necessarily know that. So she has a lot of reasons to not trust him. So that's part of what's going on. But I already kind of like how we're seeing this group dynamic. We're seeing, okay, Jazz feels this way to this character, but this way to this character. We do know from earlier in the book that Jazz knows Timon as a merchant. And so there's kind of this connection she has to him there. So it's just, they're turning into a web. I guess it's probably not the most articulate way to say it, I'm sorry, but it's just, I like seeing how, it's not distrustful character distrusts everyone, and over-trusting character over-trusts everyone. Like, we're seeing very clear, distinctive feelings from one character towards this character, and towards this character, and to this character, which makes them feel like a very authentic group. Oh! I'm going through my notes, though, and I realized that I skipped over the very beginning of the chapter. So the chapter actually opens where Nora is with her sister and sister-in-law, I should say. And they're having this fight about Timon, because Nora had left Timon with them, and they didn't really take care of him. And that's where it kind of opens up, and through the process of this argument, Nora gets an idea of where Timon is. So, sorry, we're gonna go a little bit out of order. I should, I take the time to write these. I should actually look at them. Sorry. There's a couple of things here I really like. There's a line, and this is my third time reading Aftermath, and I feel like every time I read through this book, I forget about this line, and then I read it, and then I laugh. There's a part where, I think it's her sister-in-law, Nora's sister-in-law, says, "There is a new dawn, a new day, a new republic." And this part always makes me laugh. One, it's kind of funny because there's a new dawn is another canon novel. But every time I hear this, I always think, there's a new dawn, there's a new day, there's a new republic.
It's a new dawn, it's a new day, it's a new life.
I had to get the clip because I can't sing, but I don't know why. I just always feel like when Wendig wrote this chapter, he must have had that song on his Spotify or something. Oh, but this is a line that gets to what I was saying before. One of the two sisters says, "You saved the galaxy but lost your son." Again, it's just really hitting it over the head so that you're aware that Nora was in a war. And in the war, she saved people but lost her son. I don't know if you've picked up on that, but that's a thing that happened. And we're going to make real sure that you know about it. Okay, now we're going to go back to the other stuff I was talking about. Peck to Jazz and Sinjir have rescued Timon. They're getting out of the lair of the gangster. They're actually in a casino. There's a bit where Sinjir, he's kind of going through a identity crisis, and he says something along the lines of, "We're all stardust and nothing." This, I'm sure, is 100% accidental, but it makes me kind of laugh. He says, "We're all stardust and nothing," and the two, prominent new main characters in canon right now from the films are Jin Urso, who's stardust, and Ray, who's nothing. Sure, it's an accident, but it just made me chuckle. There's just a lot that kind of goes rapid fire here. There's a bit where Nora shoots first. Literally, there's two people in an alleyway, and someone's like, "Oh, look, it's Nora," and Nora shoots them before they get to shoot. And it felt like there was just a lot of, tie-ins to other stuff going on that. Narat, who's the gangster, in his office, he has his brother frozen in carbonite, and there's a line where he goes, "A lot of people think I learned this from the Empire, but the Empire learned it from me," which is funny. But I think what this shows about him is it's supposed to show you he's really, really dangerous, and he will, mess you up if he has to, but he's also, very blusterous. He's very full of hot air. So he's the type of guy who's dangerous, but he doesn't have quite as much power as he thinks he does. And then, at the end of the chapter, everyone is saved by Mr. Bones, my favorite character in these books. If you showed up in a dark alley and this thing was looking at you, you'd be terrified too. So Mr. Bones shows up and just destroys everyone from the shadows as a stealthy assassin battle droid covered in bones, and it's pretty amazing. And then, of course, the chapter really ends with Jazz behind a speeder. Nora is in a speeder and she's pulling people along, and Jazz hooks a dead body up behind the speeder and rides on the dead body and shoots at people on their way out, because that's what bounty hunters do. So she's pretty BA too. So this chapter, Like I said, 14 is very hefty. Hefty. Like, what goes on is really, really plotty and not a lot of meaningful. So after several chapters where we're gonna make sure you get the point, darn it, everything really kind of comes together. So now Bones and Timon and Nora and Jazz and Singer are all together, all in one big group, and this is where things get real crazy town. Looking ahead, I'm gonna try to space this out so that we actually get to the end of part 2 without having to, like, end part 2 and start part 3 in the same week. So the next bit, we're gonna have chapter 15, and which is another kind of long chapter, but then chapters 16 and 17 are little baby chapters. So let's read 15, 16, and 17. We really haven't had an interlude in a while, which is odd, but let's read 15, 16, and 17 for next week, and that will put us in good shape, and we are really making good progress with the book, guys, so I'm pretty excited. The goal is to have, for sure, all 3 of these read before episode 9. In a perfect world, I really want to read all 3 of these and Bloodline with you guys before episode 9. I think it's all going to be very important. So that's what I'm moving for, and that's where I'm kind of trying to pick up pace a little bit, try to find that balance between having, like, something small enough to dissect, but still actually being able to talk about something every week, and, like, also being able to move along. But let me know if you've been reading along, what you think about what happened in the chapters. If you haven't read it before, kind of tell me where you think the story is going to go from here. Make sure you're following us Make sure you're following us on Twitter at Port Haven Forums, and visit port-haven.com for even more, and I will talk to you guys next week.